Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Safiyyah, your host. When Muslims think about sacrifice, they often think of al-Adha and the slaughter of an animal. But what really is sacrifice? The Quran seems to suggest that it goes a lot deeper than we might think. I'm here with Dr. Shabir to explore what sacrifice actually means in Islam. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
First, I think, Dr. Shabir, we must say what sacrifice is not. It's not something that is intended to benefit God, physically, to feed him in any way. God says in the Quran that neither the blood or the meat actually goes to him, right?
True.
So tell me, Dr. Shabir, what you would imagine to be sacrifice or understand to be sacrifice from the Islamic tradition.
Sure. And just to pick up on the point you were making, there is a concept that is known as theophagy, which means like either sharing a meal with God or actually feeding God. Some people thought, in ancient times that they need to present food to God. And even though they could see that the food isn't consumed, nonetheless, they have the idea that they have done something for God. And in some traditions, it is understood that you offer the sacrifice of the animal on the altar, and you present that as a burnt offering to God. So, and then it is even said in some sacred texts that the smell of the burnt offering will go up into the nostrils of God and make God happy. Most often, what happens is that the priests eat the meat. It's not that God eats the meat, and people know that, but somehow they think that it all works out in the end. But in the Islamic tradition, no, the monotheism is stressed so much that the glory, the majesty of God is stressed so much that this is emphasized. Huwa yut'imu wa la yut'am. He is the one who feeds, but no, he's not fed. And the idea of us eating this shows that we are dependent. In fact, that in philosophy, this is known as the contingency argument for the existence of God. We all depend on things, but God does not depend on anything. We depend on eating for us to survive. God does not depend on anything. So we are contingent beings. And the Quran uses that argument to say about others that you worship. If you worship any heroes among human beings, well, think about it. Do they not eat? So in the case of Mary and her son, kana ya'kulani at-ta'am, the Quran says they used to eat food. So that's a Quranic argument for why they should not be considered to be divine. So theophagy is ruled out
in Islam.
Islam, yeah. And the Quran says it very succinctly in the 22nd chapter of the Quran. La yanala Allah the flesh and blood of the sacrificial animal does not reach God. What reaches him is your devotion. So the piety, the whole awareness of God that brings you to this moment, that is what God is looking for.
Dr. Shabir, can you tell us how the story of Abraham and his sacrifice relates to the sacrifice that we should be making today?
Yeah, the story goes that Abraham was willing to offer his son as a sacrifice, but God provided an animal to be sacrificed instead of the boy. And that, of course, was a turning point in the history of religions to show that God, the monotheistic God of the Bible, does not want human sacrifices. He just wants the devotion from you. And Abraham offered and showed that devotion. A verse of the Quran that Muslims often connect with this is in the 3rd chapter of the Quran, where it says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not attain piety until you spend or give in the way of God out of that which you love. So Abraham offered that supreme sacrifice in that he was willing to give his son, his only son, whom he loved so dearly and whom he had waited so long to have, and he finally received in his old age. That was a supreme sacrifice. And of course, God does not demand of us that level of sacrifice. God knows we would fail, and we only depend on his mercy and his forgiveness and his love. He gives us a lesser challenge to see, can we give up something that we love? Now, in ancient societies, people had animals as a store of wealth. How many heads of cattle you had. That was a count of your status. So when that was a store of wealth, God was challenging worshiping people, can you give up one of what you have, for the sake of God? It doesn't have to. If it was your only one, God wouldn't demand that of you. But if you have several, can you give up one of these? So offering it as a sacrifice meant that you had an abundance of meat suddenly. You're not going to eat it all yourself. And naturally, you're going to give to your neighbors, you're going to give to the poor and needy and so on. And this is the charitable spirit that comes up as well in relation to the sacrifice.
So Dr. Shabir, now that you're saying that, I'm wondering, in the time of the prophet, I would assume that many people did not have meat to sacrifice. So it was probably just a minority of people who were sacrificing meat.
Yeah. So, of course, one could use other means. People bartered, some people had dates, some people had meat, and so they bartered, or they sold their stocks and they bought what they needed. So one could actually, benefit from their orchards and, buy meat with the proceeds and offer a sacrifice as well. In ancient societies as well, animal sacrifice was very much rooted in theology. And so we find within the monotheistic tradition of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and also outside of that, it was widely practiced in ancient Roman society, for example, in the cult of Mithras, for example. The sacrifice of a bull was very, very common. In ancient Canaanite societies, people even worshipped the cow, and it looks like this is one of the issues at hand for the Israelites coming into contact with the Canaanites and being somehow enticed by their religious practices. What are they going to do? And God commands them to sacrifice an animal, sacrifice a cow. So rather than be fascinated with this object of desire, God says, okay, sacrifice that for my sake. So this becomes a test of faith. Are you going to go with the Canaanites, worshiping the cow, or are you going to go with God, being willing to sacrifice the cow for his sake? So the sacrifice of animals has very ancient theological roots.
I'm thinking about today, where it's very easy to sacrifice an animal. Like you can just pay some money on a website. You can just use your phone if you want to, click a button, you pay some money, and the sacrifice is done, right? So Dr. Shabir, do you think we should go beyond that? Should we be thinking more about how to make sacrifices in our everyday life for God?
Yes. The whole idea of giving up something that you love for the sake of God, this should permeate, our day-to-day activities. When a Christian fasts at the season of Lent, during the season of Lent, they're giving up something for the sake of God. They decide what they're going to give up. I'm not going to eat meat, for example, and during this period of time. So they're giving up something for the sake of God. When a Muslim or a Christian or anyone else gives charity, they're giving up something of their hard-earned money for the sake of God, out of the love of God, and of course, love for fellow human beings as well. But primarily in our context here, we're thinking about the sacrifice. So this is a sacrifice for the sake of God. So we should be doing that throughout our lives. We're making choices between what we call halal, permissible, and haram, impermissible. So when we give up that which is haram, anything that will displease God, we are making a sacrifice for God. When we choose that which is more ethical, that which is more moral, sometimes it comes at a certain cost. People, in order to speak up for what is right, to defend the oppressed in Gaza, for example, people lost jobs, people lost promotions, and all kinds of opportunities. People lost business and so on. But they're doing that for the sake of God. So it's not only at the time of Eid that we perform a sacrifice in this particular ritualistic form, but sacrifice should permeate our whole existence.
All right. Thank you for that, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Media Hub, the new home of Let the Quran Speak.
Here we spread positivity and good. We help people experience the beauty of Islam and help them appreciate and understand Muslims.
This beautiful building we purchased at cost $2.3 million.
Yeah, we've already raised a third of that money, and with your help, inshallah, we can pay off the rest.
So we're looking for people who can give $1,000 each. If you can be part of the select group, that's amazing.
Otherwise, just please give whatever whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help us continue this good work.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be a benefit to the Muslim community long after Safiyyah and I are gone.
Please support our work at MuslimMediaHub.com.
Your support is zakat eligible and tax deductible.
May Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.